is being recorded.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the event for Black History Month for the East Tennessee chapter of the Society for Professional Journalists. We have LaChina Robinson here. She is the co-founder of Rising Media Stars, a longtime basketball analyst for the women's college basketball and the WNBA and the draft. She's also an outstanding player at Wake Forest University. So she played the game and she can talk the game. And she is now the co-host of Huge Fan, where Stars Talk Sports. And it is a fantastic podcast. And if you have not been on it, check it out. Comedians, actors, entertainers, they're the ones talking sports. And it is a wonderful podcast to listen to. Gwen Ducre is an anchor and multimedia reporter for WVLT. That is the CBS affiliate in Knoxville. She is also a board member of ETSPJ and will be conducting this interview with LaChina Robinson. I will exit out now, and everyone please enjoy listening to them. If you have questions, they are very happy to answer your questions. You can put them in the chat and we will keep an eye on them. Thank you both.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And thank you all for watching. As you heard, this is a presentation by the East Tennessee Society of Professional Journalists, and we are so excited to have our special guest here with us, Miss LaChina Robinson. Thank you again for being here with us and spending your time with us. I know that you are a woman, so we really do appreciate you for being here.
Thank you so much, Gwen. I appreciate that. And thank you, Maria, for that amazing introduction. It's really an honor for me to be here. I said this offline before we jumped on, but have so much respect for Maria and what she's done, especially in the sport of women's basketball around journalism. She is a pioneer. She's been a friend of mine in this field. So anytime she asks me for anything, I'm pretty much a yes. So just grateful to be here. Tennessee has meant a lot as far as the state and the history of women's basketball to my career. So I'm really just honored and excited to have this conversation with you, Gwen.
Yes, we do not go to Miss Maria. Well, let's just dive on it. Like I said, this is truly a pleasure. We get to talk about the very things we do on a day-to-day basis, but you have opened realm of opportunities for young professionals who are looking to get into the business. Just talk a little bit about your can we call it your passion?
Yes, I'm very passionate about Rising Media Stars. So, I guess I should start with, being a former student athlete. One thing that I was challenged with when I was done with my playing career was figuring out what my next steps in life would be, right? So I played at Wake Forest, as Maria mentioned, for 4 years. And when I was done, I remember showing up to the basketball office, after our final game and was like, okay, what are we doing next? And my coaches looked at me like, what do you mean? Like it's over. Like now you got to find out whatever else you're supposed to be doing in life. And so that was the beginning of a really challenging journey for me. I had spent my 4 years at Wake Forest very focused on the academic side, very focused on basketball, but not as much on career development and not as much on character development and community interest. So there were so many things about myself that I had yet to explore. And so that's kind of what I draw from in a lot of the work that I do now, is wanting to help student athletes, especially women athletes, figure out what comes next after sport, right? We're not all going to be drafted to the WNBA. We're not all Candace Parkers. We're not all Shamiqua Holesclaw. I'm wearing my orange. So of course I know the names I need to be calling right now, but, but we still have so much value in what we've learned as student athletes. So it's how do we apply that to the next phase of life? So I've always been passionate about that. And I created my own company called Stretch Beyond back in 2010, to kind of allow myself an avenue to work in that space with colleges and universities, helping student athletes in that way as I was pursuing my career in broadcasting. Now, fast forward to Rising Media Stars, which I know we're here to talk about today. My transition into sports broadcasting was challenging, right? Like I majored in sociology in school, had no previous broadcasting experience, had never been on television. And I was having what I would call a quarter life crisis at 26 years old, saying, I wanted to get into broadcasting, but I'm not exactly sure how to do it, right? And so there was a lot of, conversations with possible mentors. There was a lot of job shadowing. There were a lot of things that I did to try to figure out if that was the right place for me. And eventually, thank goodness, because I had great mentors, I was able to get into the field and have had great success. But I created Rising Media Stars to help women of color that want to get into sports broadcasting, to help them in that transition that was challenging for me, to give them the support, the education, the reps that they need to be able to get into this field. And it's for women of color in particular, because I feel like we need more diversity in sports broadcasting. Yes, we need more women for sure, right? Like we're underrepresented as a gender, but women of color are an even smaller number of broadcasters that you see on television. So this really comes from me wanting to help young women transition into this field, but also to impact the diversity of sports broadcasting overall.
And we've seen some of the success that has come from that. And it's been such a joy just to watch the trajectory of not only your career, but the others that came behind you. You said something about challenge, right? Let's get into that because we so often say, things are challenging for us. There are barriers, but what exactly did that look like? And what were some of those challenges for you as a Black woman?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gwen. I think the first challenge for me was that I wanted to cover women's sports, right? Like I was never interested in covering men's sports. I just was not. I've had plenty of opportunities to cover the NBA, to cover NFL, but I have such a great love for not only women's basketball, but just the importance of visibility and representation for women in sports. And I remember like it was yesterday watching Pat Summitt in an interview speak to the need to have more women's basketball games on television. She was like, we need this sport on television. And it really impacted me. She talked with those icy blue eyes, and it really sent a message to me, like, what can I do to help there to be more visibility for women? So I think the first part was, can we get opportunities to cover women's sports? Where are they? We don't see women's sports on TV as much. So that was kind of the first hurdle. But then it became about, just the kind of stigma, if you will, that women don't know anything about sports, like overcoming that idea of, oh, women don't care about sports, or, oh, women, who listens to them talk about sports, right? So it was overcoming kind of that barrier of people thinking that our voice didn't matter or it wasn't as important. So that was definitely challenging. But as a Black woman, what I found when I came into this space was that not only was I experiencing some of the misogynistic views of being a woman, but then you add to that being a Black woman and there being honestly a lot of racism. I am at the intersection of two minorities, being a woman and being Black. And so there was this thinking at one point of either we don't need a Black woman at all, or if we have one, why do we need two, right? So it was almost this idea like there was only space for one of us. And so really just understanding that I had to work twice as hard, that I was here to dispel some of these ridiculous thoughts around the validity of women's opinions and the need for Black women, and being able to sit in those rooms and really believe that I mattered, that my opinion mattered, that, there was a space for me. So it has definitely been an uphill climb. And those were a couple of examples of what I've had to battle to date.
Can you talk about some of the added perspective that you're able to present in the space as a Black woman?
Boy, just my experiences in the world. I think about women's basketball in general, right? Which is the sport that I cover. The WNBA, I think last I checked, is like 75% plus women of color. There's a large number of Black women in particular that make up our college women's basketball players. So to be able to speak from the perspective of those experiences for those athletes, right? Like I remember going to practices when I was a student athlete, and all I saw was, white women who were covering our sport. And that's great. We want women, and we had some of the best. Debbie Antonelli is one that I know covered a lot of my games that folks on this call may be familiar with, but, there weren't women that looked like me. And so it was really about being able to say, hey, like, where are these examples and where can we find people that can speak to my specific experience, right? Because as a Black woman, my experience is going to be different from a Hispanic woman. It's going to be different from a white woman. It's going to be different. So there are things that especially as we've seen the intersection of social justice in the last few years, that I could speak to that there wasn't once a voice for. So that to me is the importance, is being able to represent the women who are on the court, the women who are playing the game, but also showing them that there's something that they can do after their careers, right? Like, I'm a tangible example when I walk into that practice of what their career could look like post basketball.
And that's something you don't always think about, is the what after, what is the plan after, especially when you've been doing it for so long and that's what and you've been able to cultivate a different avenue. And you mentioned TV, but as we know, just from your career, you've been able to hit on different platforms and different mediums. How important has that been for you to navigate different spaces such as podcasts, YouTube, and social media?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gwen. I give so much credit in what I've been able to do to my career to other mediums for a couple reasons. Number one is because we don't see women's basketball marketed as broadly as we see other sports. Social media has really been a place where we've created our own marketing, where we've created our own buzz, where we've been able to connect with other fans of the game, coaches, players, in a way that costs nothing, right? So as we're trying to build the dollars and the sponsorships around women's basketball, social media has always been a free medium for us to build our brands, to talk about this game that we love, to build interest. And so I still remember one of my first avatars, which they were called then, on Twitter, was like me holding a microphone with like a purple suit on. And I was like, when people see me, I just want them to think about basketball and broadcasting, right? So I was able to build a brand in that space. And Maria would know this, there's been many years in our sport, even before I got involved, where you didn't have people, like you only had one or two people covering a post-game presser for women's basketball. So then it becomes, okay, how do we get the word out? How do we get people to know what's happening if we're not on the front page of the newspaper, if we're not getting, I will say not all places are as great at promoting women's basketball as Knoxville is in particular. So how do we get the word out? And social media has been a way to do that. So it's been important to me. But also, you mentioned digital. I mean, how many games do we have now that are live streamed, right? So there's only so much space on the main channels of sport where you can consume anything, right? There's just, you run out of space. But now we've got so many digital platforms. ESPN Plus is one that I love, that we can watch now. And there's like the SEC network that streams and the ACC network. So many more opportunities for us to cover, in particular, women's sports, more spaces for us to see our game. So it has meant everything to me in my career to have different mediums. And of course, podcasting. I started a podcast called Around the Rim. Must have been almost 7-8 years ago now. And we created Around the Rim as a place to have deeper conversation around women's basketball. How many times have you wanted to talk about like a game-winning shot, and the next day you turn on your television and you don't see the conversation about that on the women's side? And we wanted to have a space for that. We also wanted to have a space to talk about the history of our game and to have interviews with different people who are impacting our sport in various ways. So our podcast Around the Rim, we have interviewed so many people in and around basketball. And it's kind of our way of having conversations. You don't always need television anymore, right? Like podcasts are now a thing. So, that has been an aspect that's been really important to me as well.
And it sounds like there's more to just the game, right? There are stories, there are people's lives. How much of that storytelling is important for you to be able to really truly understand it, to push?
Yeah. Storytelling's everything, right? Like we all can remember the first time we fell in love with sport, and it was probably, seeing your favorite player or for me, it was Lisa Leslie in the 96 Olympics. And I was like, I need to know everything about her life. Like, I'm obsessed with her. She's amazing. She's strong. She's tough. She's great at basketball. She's smart, charismatic, and I just wanted to consume everything about Lisa. And that's how you make that's how you make fans, is fans fall in love with the players, with their stories, with their performances on the court, what makes them so great, what motivates them. And those are the things that oftentimes we don't get to hear about around the game. So creating storytelling helps a fan to go from maybe casual to invested, because all of a sudden you find out, oh, me and Lisa Leslie are from the same city, or, my mom and Leslie's mom have the same job. Whatever those parallels are, you kind of find those things that make you latch on to a certain player or a certain team. And a lot of that we find through the stories of the game. I think of one story in particular that's really impacted me throughout my career. I know y'all are going to get tired of me talking about the Lady Vols, or maybe not.
No,
but
we're in good company.
But, Tamika Catchings, who is I consider a very good friend, who I had a catch up Zoom with the other day. When you think about what she has done in her career, it just blows you away. I mean, she's my all-time favorite player by far. But when you add that to her hearing impairment, which a lot of people did not know about for a long time, what she's done is even more extraordinary. And, the fact that she's been able to share that with so many people through storytelling has now inspired a whole new group of people that may not be able to identify with Tamika as far as having her level of talent, but we all have some kind of impairment or something in our lives that, was a challenge for us, or something that we had to overcome in order to find our best selves. And so you find yourself falling in love with Tamika for a whole nother reason. And it happened through storytelling. It happened through her sharing a part of her journey. So that would be, I think, an example for me of something that's impacted my career. Every time I talk about it, and what I found with Tamika was how astute she is with other aspects of, her game, because she has that impairment. She's better with her hands, the way that she can see things with her eyes. Like it's an incredible all around story, that was built through storytelling.
Okay, so we take all of your strategies, all of your plays from your lessons, and you cultivate it into almost like a lesson plan for your students in Rising Media. Can you talk more about just what does it look like? You're holding the student's hand. I come to you as a student. I don't know the first thing about broadcast. How are you going to help me get to the point where I want to be?
Yeah, so I will say that we are in our third class now as a nonprofit. We have every year. So let me step back. So every year we accept 5 women into our program, and they spend a year with us. So it started with our 2019 class. We have a 2020 class. We skipped 2021 due to COVID, and now we're in our 2022 class. So they come and they apply. I don't have any input on the judging aspect of that, which is what I like, because I'm like, I can't make these decisions like someone else. So we have a selection committee, and basically they choose 5 women, and they start in our program, and we have a few objectives of what we try to accomplish with them. Number one priority is we want to help them get actual game experience. When you go get a job in broadcasting, the first thing they're going to ask you is, okay, let us see the work you've done. But if you've never been hired before and you're trying to get hired, then you don't have any work. So it's like, how can I show them what I'm capable of? So we have a partnership with 4 of the professional teams here in Atlanta: the Hawks, the Falcons, the Dream, and the United. And they allow our young women to come and actually do stand-ups live, pregame, and to be on the field, and to sit in the press box, and to halftime do, interviews and things like that. And so they give us this access where our young women get to improve on their skills, and they don't have to wait till they are on the job and everything is, that much more pressure packed. I mean, they do feel a pressure. I put some pressure on them, but, they can actually get critiques, and I can help them. So I may say things like, hey, make sure you maintain eye contact, or you might be using too many stats in your report. Maybe cut back on some of that, or let me see more of your personality. There are any number of things that I may say, and watching their work to kind of help them improve. So that's the number one prong, is how can we help them get on camera experience? And what we do at the end of the program is we take that on-camera experience, and we put together a reel of work for them. So most of the time when you show up for a broadcasting job, they'll say, where's your reel? It's like common language in this profession. And we put together a reel from their work that they did with us and maybe some other things that they've done during the year, so they have something to present. The second aspect of that is the classroom part. And I think that's kind of what you were alluding to as well, is we have classroom sessions throughout the year, virtually and in person, where we teach various aspects of broadcasting. How do you ask a question? You'd be surprised. I took an entire course at ESPN about question asking. It's not as easy as you think. Because you want to get the best answer. You don't want the yes and no. Like, how do you really engage the person you're interviewing? So we talk about that. How do you dress? We talk about negotiating. When do you need an agent? I mean, that's a real good one, right? Like, we're all about sharing information. We found that as women, we can help each other so much if we're sharing the numbers, right? Like, girl, I'm just going to ask you straight up, how much do you make? Because I need to know how much I should be making, right? And sharing those secrets. But we also talk about things like mental health, work-life balance, just all of the aspects of what you may need to have a whole and complete career, not just getting a job, not just on camera, but like, we want to create a safe space to have conversations, to ask questions about this industry. And in those classroom sessions, we bring in so many guest speakers. I mean, we've brought in Cindy Brunson or Roz Golden Wude. We've brought in, any number of women you can think of on camera, Angel Gray, Tabitha Turner, to share their experiences with these women, right? Because we all know that mentorship is super important. So that's the other aspect of it. And then last but not least, it's just building a community. That's the biggest thing for us, is we're going to introduce you to possible mentors, and you've got your sisters to support you, just having that safe space. So those are kind of the three prongs of our program. And what we found, Gwen, which has been awesome, is we're becoming a pipeline for organizations that are looking for Black women as talent. So we got calls last summer from 2 NBA teams that were like, hey, we're hiring. We would love to know if you have some candidates. And so what we hope is that people will look at Rising Media Stars as a place where they can come and learn about diverse talent. And we've got a couple superstars, to be quite honest. I mean, Andraya Carter, who you all probably know, is a star. She is a generational talent. Now, we can't take any credit for how good Andraya is. We were very fortunate that she went through our program before she had this meteoric rise. So, it's great for us to say, wow, she was in our program 4 years ago. Now look at where she is. But in actuality, Andraya was going to be a superstar anyway. But when you have people like her who have come through the program, who give credit back to us for what we've meant to her, or Zora Stevenson and people like that, then people see our body of work and how successful some of our young women have been. And so they're calling us. And that's been an aspect of the program that has been just awesome to see develop.
As journalists, we love to bring you the facts and sources, and we've heard your side, and we love to share the other side. And you mentioned Andraya Carter. Jack, are you still with us? I think now might be a perfect time to segue into our next quick presentation here.
Okay, I'll see if I can make that happen here.
Thank you so much, sir. Hold on for 1 second, guys. Bear with us. We have a little something for you.
My name is Andraya Carter. I am a basketball analyst, sports reporter, and host for ESPN. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone on this call for your interest in Rising Media Stars, the coverage of Rising Media Stars, whether you are writing about it, learning about it, supporting the program. Thank you. It is such an instrumental program. It has been for me, not only in my career, but also just for my life in general. When I joined Rising Media Stars as a part of the first cohort, I was a fitness trainer in Atlanta. I had such a small lens and such a slim, narrow-minded view of what my career could be. I remember telling LaChina, I don't want to be a sideline reporter. I only want to cover women's basketball. I think I just want to do it part-time. And I think part of that view and part of that opinion that I had at the time was I just didn't have any belief in myself. I didn't think it was possible for me to be where I am today. And Rising Media Stars and LaChina helped me not only think bigger of myself and what my career could be in this field, but they also helped me find the tools and learn what it took to actually make it happen. So when it comes to thinking bigger and feeling competent and feeling confident in this space, Rising Media Stars was huge. LaChina was and still is incredible. She helped me in so many ways and still does, not only professionally, but also just in life. Rising Media Stars is a sisterhood. It is a family. It is such a big deal and such a key component to who I am today as an analyst, but also just as a woman. This program means a lot to me. So for everyone interested, again, thank you. And LaChina, I just can't even say thank you enough. You are the definition of selflessness and care and love and joy and light. And you have transformed not only my life, but everybody in the program and everyone that will continue to be in the program. So thank you, everybody.
That was wonderful.
Wow. You guys are gonna make me cry. Oh man, thank you guys so much for that. Oh wow, that was amazing. Wow, thank you so much. Andraya is amazing. She's a one of a kind person. She really is.
And I'm so happy that she hit on it, because I was hoping that our conversation would get us here. Believing in yourself, right? I mean, this is a job that you don't have the formula to it, and that is the beauty of it. But sometimes that can be discouraging. Am I good enough? Can I do this? I haven't seen anyone else do this. I'm not connected with anyone doing this. How much do you pour into the girls? I mean, we just heard from Andraya, but how much personally do you sit back and say, this part is important? You talked about mental health as well. But what is it that you're doing and sharing with the girls?
Yeah, boy. One of my favorite quotes is, don't be afraid to go out on a limb, because that's where the fruit is. And what I find in particular with a lot of women, young women, is that they see that fruit and they see the possibility of what they can be, but that branch looks a little scary, right? And oftentimes we've all been in our lives where all we need is just one person to say, you can do it, right? Or for one person to speak life into us, or for one person to say, hey, you're doing a great job. And I think, I'm definitely a woman of faith, and I'm so grateful to God, because I feel like I have an actual gift of encouragement. I just naturally love to encourage people, to pour life into them. I am a optimist. I am a glass half full person by nature. And if we all just imagine, if we all just one time a day or twice a day took a moment to speak life into someone, right? Because we're all going through things that maybe no one knows about. We're all struggling to get our confidence together. We're all probably having some of that comparison syndrome you hear about, where we're saying, oh, we're not as good as this person, so maybe we're not that good, or, it all looks very scary. Imagine if we all just took a moment to be positive with someone, to pat them on the back. And that's what we want to do for these women. The world can beat you up, especially as a woman in a male-dominated field. Like, you feel lonely, you feel isolated, you feel like you're not good enough. You don't see yourself, in all these places. You don't see people that look like you. And so that consistent belief in what you're doing and who you are and that you belong is an everyday fight. And knowing that you have not only myself and our co-founder, Kevin Nixon, but you have the other 4 women in your class and the women that came before your class and that will come after you, that are all cheering for you. Like, it means the world. And I know I've needed that pat on the back along the way, and I've gotten it from a Doris Burke, or, so many women in this field that have taken a moment, Christy Winter Scott, to just say, I'm proud of you. It has meant so much. And so I think that confidence piece is often everything. We can have all the skill in the world, right? And particularly as women, I feel like we often look at the list of things and we start to check the boxes that we don't have instead of the box of the things we do have, right? So if we just start to have confidence and faith in what we do bring to the table and our uniqueness, but also have some folks that are willing to pat us on the back along the way, it could be all the difference. You can have the skill, but it doesn't mean you can execute because you may not have the belief. And when that red light comes on, I can tell you from experience in this broadcasting world, and you know this, Gwen, when that light comes on, you either start to perform or, things can go south really quickly. So having that confidence in yourself can mean everything, in particular in this field.
And sometimes you feel like you're drowning, right? Because and we have students watching, and students, I'll tell you too, you're not going to always get that good job, but more oftentimes than not, you'll get what you didn't do right. Yes. And so important, and that can tear you apart, and and chip away at you and your confidence, especially as you keep doing it, because like I said, there is no formula, right? Yes. There are best practices, but truly this is an art, and you can have and paint that picture in the painting the way that you want. So how do you cultivate, and how do you bring for, even if you're not in this cohort or you're not a part of your program, how do you encourage students to go about getting a mentor or just someone in your corner?
Yeah, it's a process. I think one thing that I would advise, and this is whatever field you want to get into, is watch the people who you may want to be like, right? So like I watched a lot of basketball. I watched a lot of Doris Burke. I still, until she walked away from broadcasting, listened to Carol Lawson. I listened to a lot of different people. And from that, you start to shape an idea of what you may want to be or how you may want to do the job. Everyone's going to be different and unique. But I think once you have those ideas and thoughts of those people, I think you try to connect with them. I was very grateful to be able to reach out to those folks and never got a no. I always got some good advice. I always got, something that I could walk away with, some form of mentoring. I've had women who have sat down with me and, gone over their charts. Carolyn Peck was one that did that for me early in my career. So it's like, you look for those people who are doing something that you would want to do, and you either try to touch base with them, or mentoring sometimes can happen from afar. There are people that I haven't spent a great amount of time with, but I study, and it is a form of mentoring, like being able to watch those examples and learn from what they do. I've met Robin Roberts twice, but in my mind, she's my mentor because I've picked up so many tips from her and how she does her job and her level of authenticity. So there are different levels of mentorship, but I would also say, look around you, look in a group like this, look in your city, look at, around in the schools in your area, depending on what you want to get into, and reach out to people. Hey, would you mind having a cup of coffee, or can we have a virtual Zoom date? Would love to pick your brain, or going to chapter meetings or joining groups that support inspiring journalists and trying to connect with mentors that way. It is so impossible to do this alone because we are often more critical of ourselves than we are complimentary. And that's the wrong way to go about this. So you often need people that will, yes, tell you where you can improve, but also help to build you up. But mentoring, I've had so many I can't even name. And it's just about having those one-on-one conversations, but also, just watching from afar and picking up and learning from those that are doing it the right way.
And we're getting in some questions in the chat box. I'll just kind of go through those if that's fine. I'll go with the latest question that we just got from Melanie Staten. Two-part question here. One, how do you advise young women on handling rejection? That's a good one. We'll start with that.
Yeah, rejection can be tough, right? Especially, I think, as a former athlete, I had to really understand that everything is not about a score, right? It was always like, well, if I do the math here, I should have won this game, right? Or if I score this many points or have this many rebounds, we should win. But the world is very subjective, and you can be an amazing broadcaster, but that doesn't mean that everyone is going to say, oh, I want LaChina, and that's okay. And so I think it really starts with the belief in your ability to be successful, even in the eyes of a lot of no's. I got a lot of people in my first couple of years looking at, my lack of experience, and they're like, you think you're going to be on television, and you're a sociology major and you've never done television before. How does this work? Right? No, get out of here. Right? And so you have to have such a strong belief in yourself in the face of those no's, and just know that that may not be your opportunity, but your next opportunity is right around the corner. There's so many things that you can do in the field of broadcasting, especially now with the addition of digital, that, one closed door or one rejection is just redirection is the way I look at it. Like, that door closes. Okay, that's not the direction you're supposed to head in. It's redirection to head somewhere else. And that's when those conversations with mentors in your support group are that much more important, because after you get rejected, you kind of like start to question yourself, start to waver some. And so talking to your support group about, how do I refocus? And guys, I'm feeling real down on myself. Like, I need you to build me up, having bodies of work that you can watch and remembering how good you are. I go back and watch my games all the time. Like, if I have a bad game, I'll go back and watch a good game and be like, okay, you had a bad one, but you know what you're capable of. So it just takes a very high level of belief and confidence. And one thing that I remember Coach Yao, the late Coach Yao at NC State, saying is, you can wallow in self-pity for a little bit. You can swish your feet around in it, but then you got to get up and get out. So you can have your one moment of feeling down and feeling sad about rejection, but then you got to be quick to overcome it. You got to be quick to forget about it. Next play, which is a term we use in basketball all the time. You turn the ball over, things don't go your way on one end of the floor. You got to quickly recover, because you got 2 more points that you can get on the next possession. So bouncing back quickly is definitely something that I would suggest in those situations.
Thank you for that. And sometimes rejection is protection.
That part. Protection, redirection, right? Yes, Gwen. Absolutely.
Hey, and the second half, what do you tell them not to do in their job search? That's a good one too.
Yeah, that's a really good question. What not to do in your job search? I would say do not always go after the bright and shiny job. Like, there's some opportunities out here where you may look and say, wow, if I get this job, I'm going to have the most airtime, or I'm going to have the highest platform, or I'm going to, be able to live in the city I want to live in. But none of those things really make that the best job for you. Really drill down to the nuts and bolts of any position that you are applying for in the job search, of what is the day-to-day like. Try to have conversations with people that maybe work in that organization, of what their experience has been like. Where does this fit in the grand scheme of what you're trying to do? And I'll give you some examples. When I was first getting into broadcasting, I had to do a lot of work for free. I did a lot of volunteer work, because it wasn't about, I had a full-time job at that time, right? Pursuing my career in broadcasting. My first career was in athletic administration. I worked at Georgia Tech for 7 years because I thought I wanted to be an athletics director. Found my brain, but we can get into that another time. But I had to do a lot of different types of work to get experience. So I had the money to sustain my life with my full-time job. And these people didn't have a budget to pay me, but I could get experience. So if I was only looking for jobs that were going to pay me money, no one was going to pay me, because I didn't have experience. I had to get out and do some things for free to get the experience, to get some things under my belt. And so had I been looking for something else, or had I only settled for jobs that paid me, I wouldn't have gotten the experience that I needed. That's one thing. The other part, again, going back to not always looking for the bright and shiny job, is I could have left to do men's sports a long time ago. Could have left to go do the NFL or do the NBA, because those jobs look bright and shiny. But nothing is more fulfilling than waking up every day knowing I'm covering women's sports, knowing I'm giving back to the game of women's basketball that has given so much to me. So there's different levels of fulfillment. Yes, you can be happy with more exposure and more money and all of that. But for me, it's like, I want to search for opportunities that are going to allow me to serve my purpose. And that is where job searches should begin. Does this opportunity serve my purpose and what I'm trying to do overall in my career? Not just money, exposure, some of those things that oftentimes, unfortunately, we put too much stock in.
I love that. We got another question from Michael Martinez here. He's asking, looking at the Rising Media Stars website, I don't see where students can apply. What is the application process?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Michael. So we are actually getting ready to launch our applications, or open our applications for the 2023 class on March 1st. So we're really excited. We actually just had a call about that yesterday. And what it will look like is our website will be updated leading up to March 1st, just letting folks know that the applications are about to open. We will also post on our social media pages to let everyone know applications will be available March 1. We'll be doing a IG Live March 7th. So 1 week after applications start, in order to do like a little informational conversation on Instagram with people that are interested in the program. And so, yeah, we are getting ready to accept our new cohort. And what the application process looks like is it's pretty streamlined, but we get basic information, where you're from, what are your aspirations? We ask some of the basic questions, but then we have you submit a video telling us why you think you should be a member of Rising Media Stars. And that video is a big part of our application process, because we get to see you on camera. We get to hear, your passion, your purpose, why you want to be a part of the program. So our judges definitely put a lot of weight in that. There's we ask for resume. There's some other questions we ask, but I think that video component is a big part of determining who our ultimate class of 5 will be. The only thing that we ask is that you be 21. You don't even have to have gone to college. We want to make sure that the playing field is leveled for anyone that has interest in broadcasting. If you can woo over our judges with your qualifications and with your submission, then as long as you're 21 and, we don't have to worry about you, you're legal, you can do, when you come to Atlanta, that's really it. So that's our application process. So they would apply anytime between March 1st and April 1st. We'll have our applications open for a month, and then we announce our new class on May 1st.
Thank you so much. And if you're watching, please submit any questions that you have. Even if you want to leave a comment with us, we're taking all questions and comments on Zoom, in the chat box, as well as on Facebook. Doesn't look like we have any Facebook questions, and it looks like we've saved the best for last. From Maria, what are best lessons you've learned along the way, especially the tough ones?
Best lessons I've learned along the way. A lot. First, I would say number one is it's never too late to change your mind about your career. And this is just broadly thinking, because again, I started my career out of college in athletic administration. I worked at Georgia Tech for 7 years, wanted to be an athletic director. And sometimes we get our mind set on what we think we want to be when we grow up, as we are coming through those college years, or even late in your career. Maybe you've been doing the same thing for a long time, but you've had this passion or desire to chase another dream, and it's never too late. I mean, I was in probably 27 when I decided to really pursue broadcasting, 29 before I was on my first national broadcast. So most people would say that was late, especially because those of you watching, as far as the journalism class, you've studied this, like this is what you want to do. So you've got a major head start. But it's never too late to pivot into whatever you may be interested in. And it was a tough lesson for me, because I didn't want to accept what I knew was my purpose. And doubted myself. So it took me a while to really jump 2 feet into, what I felt like I was supposed to be ultimately doing. So I hit my head up against the wall a few times in that, and would just encourage anyone that feels like your heart is pulling you in another direction, explore it, try it, do some job research, do some job shadowing, do some volunteering, have conversations with mentors to find out what your true north is. Other tough lessons, listen.
Whoa. You can bring that one where.
I was actually just reliving the moments of one of my most embarrassing broadcasting blunders, if you will. So I was covering the Final Four. This was during Brittany Griner's years. I want to say, because I remember, the interview I did with Kim Mulkey. But long story short, I was an NCAA.com reporter, and they had laid out the instructions very clearly as to the order in which we were supposed to do post-game interviews. So here I am, this young, fresh reporter, just excited about covering the Final Four and being there. And, it's just the bright lights, the big stage. I'm ready. And I failed to listen to the instruction that says, before anyone else gets an interview, ESPN will take a live interview after the game. Young LaChina goes, and I'm sure someone told me to do this. I'm not taking any credit for jumping out on my own and getting in trouble, but it might have been a little bit of me. Young LaChina just runs over to Coach Mulkey after the game, and I was like, just started interviewing her, and all the lights were all of a sudden on me, and I was like, wait, am I supposed to be here? Like I like right away I felt that I was doing something wrong, and I had in fact jumped ESPN for the interview. They were live trying to toss to the interview with Coach Mulkey, and here is LaChina with NCAA.com, who had now snatched that interview. And so I didn't listen. I didn't pay attention. And it could have been a real career altering moment. And I am sad to say that I did get banned from being the NCAA.com reporter for 1 year after that.
Wow.
But I learned my lesson, and, you got to pay attention. Like especially when it comes to live television, because you got to be able to think on your feet. And so your ability to take instructions from your producer in one ear, the person you're talking to here, you got to read the room. Yeah, there's so many aspects of what's happening. You got to be able to balance. So listening is something, it was a tough lesson for me, but I definitely, I figured it out. Other tough lessons were just, again, I think that one of the biggest ones, and I'll end with this, was that in covering women's sport, you have to be able to wear a lot of different hats. And that's a tough lesson to learn, because I show up thinking most of the time, and this was early in my career, and I've worked for various networks. I've done work for .coms. I've done work for a lot of people, but showing up feeling like I just needed to be an analyst or just needed to be a reporter. But when it comes to women's basketball, you have to be an advocate. You have to market the sport. You're often trying to change minds around the resources that are allocated to women's basketball, women's sports. So you're wearing a lot of different hats. I think in most traditional male sports, in my position, you show up because there's already, this high level of expectation, and, this is what we do. Men's sports, they're here, they exist. When that's not the setup in a lot of occasions for women's sports. It is now. Things have gotten a lot better. We still have a ways to go, but it was tough for me to be a young journalist and really showing up and realizing that you may have to convince some people that, you show up and people like, oh, who is, I don't know, who's Odyssey Sims? And, these are people you're working with, and you're like, oh my gosh, like if they don't know who Odyssey Sims is, like we got a lot to talk about. So just, I think, accepting that in my particular field, I had to be an educator and wear a lot of different hats around our sport in order for us to all have success in whatever we were doing.
But those are the layers and the makings of a journalist, right? I mean, being that Renaissance man or woman and knowing everything, and also being that educator at the same time. It is a responsibility. It is a responsibility.
It is. You're right. It absolutely is. And one that I wear proudly.
Yes, and you do it so gracefully. We appreciate it. You're building your army and filling that gap. We love that. Okay, another from Maria. What makes Andraya Carter so good? How important is preparation and the hours that takes for each game?
Whew. Yeah. So it's interesting. That may look like two different questions, but actually Andraya and preparation are the same person. What makes Andraya so good? First of all, she has it. And I often say that Andraya is a generational talent. And what I mean by that is she is so special in that she has the perfect combination of all the things that make you a successful journalist: delivery, personality, information, understanding, analysis, presentation. She has all of the things that you could possibly want. Most of us out in the world, like myself, have like 3 out of 5. You're like, okay, all right, I got 3 out of 5. I can build on those other things, but she has all of them, and at a very, I would say, young age, right? And that she hasn't been doing this very long. But I was talking to someone about this the other day as it pertains to Andraya, because one of my friends follows her, and she's like, I'm so in awe of Andraya and how she's disciplined in her workouts and her eating habits. If you follow her, you know that she is crazy about, her physical training. And I'm like, that is how she is about everything. She's so disciplined, very detailed in her approach and how she studies, how she prepares, the forethought that she puts into what she's about to do going into a game, understanding the moment. These are all things that are building in. And I'll be honest, and Maria, it's an excellent question, because I don't think a lot of people understand this when they watch television. What you see on TV, like the actual game, is 5% of the job. 95% of it is preparation. And you might get to say 10% of the information that you've studied to talk about, maybe 10%, and that other 90, you got to be ready for, right? But it probably won't make air. And so when you're preparing for a game, you're reading articles, you're watching film, you're going to shoot around, you're talking to coaches, you're conducting interviews, you've watched 3 games before that, you have studied the conference, you've studied the national landscape. It is a lot. And someone who mentored me earlier in my career, Wes Durham, once told me that as the analyst on a game, you have to know everything. You are the expert. That's literally my role as the analyst, as the expert. So you try to learn everything you can about both teams, about, again, the conference, the big picture. And so Andraya is obsessive about preparation. And that is honestly what has made her such a superstar so early, is that she is disciplined. She puts so much into her preparation, so much pride. But in all honesty, she also absorbed so much of what she learned from the game of basketball, right? Like I always say that, and those of you that watched her play, she was tough and scrappy. I mean, I would hold my breath watching Andraya play, because she was probably going to slam up against the stanchion. She was going to be the first player down the floor. She was quick. She was going to fall and, hurt herself and then come back. I mean, she was just very tough physically and scrappy. And she's the same way in what she does in her broadcasting career, just leaving no stone unturned, incredible work ethic. And I can't say enough about, what she's put into her career and how deserving she is for all the success she's had. But it has everything to do with her willingness to really be a student and to learn and to be prepared for the moment through her discipline.
And that is the one thing that you can take with you. And another part of the beauty of journalism, there's so many elements to it, is that you get to be a student. You get to learn every day. The job is never over.
Yes, that part. Yes, that part. It's never over. And, I even hear from people that have been in this field for a very long time that they're still learning. You have to constantly be watching your work. having other people read it. And that would be one other piece of advice that I would give to young people who are interested in journalism is share your work with as many people as you can and ask for feedback. At this point in your career, and I did this early, and when I was in broadcasting, I wasn't sending emails saying, hey, can I have a job? I was sending emails saying, hey, can you give me feedback on this work? Tell me where I can improve. Tell me where I can get better. Like that is going to add up, and eventually that job comes, but you got to start with making sure that you're getting better every day. And to your point, Gwen, it never ends. It's always about, trying to add, improve, and become better day after day.
Well, LaChina Robinson, thank you so much. This has been such a joy on this afternoon, just speaking with you, dropping all these gems for us. We appreciate it. And I think at any level that you're on in your journey, you're able to walk away with life lessons that and continue to bridge a gap for journalism world that is at constant evolution. So we appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Maria?
Thank you, Gwen. It's been a pleasure.
I want to personally thank Gwen Ducre. We had someone set up to do this interview, and a last-minute conflict late yesterday afternoon prevented that. And I hit Gwen up last minute. She said, certainly I'll do it. Just tell me what I'm doing and what I need to do. Gwen, you knocked that out of the park, a little sports reference. So thank you.
Great job, Gwen.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Michael Martinez, he's our UT journalism professor, said, thank you, LaChina, great presentation. Matt Rankin also said, thanks so much. And Melanie Staton, who is a longtime journalist and also used to be a White House communications director. I believe I got that right, Melanie. I know she has an esteemed service and public service. And thank you, LaChina, outstanding and valuable advice. The Andraya Carter wanted to be here in person to say that, but she had a last minute noon meeting. You know her life. She's always,
yes.
So she covered an ACC women's basketball game last night, and she taped that interview late last night from her apartment and retransferred it to me. We will have it on our YouTube channel. I'll share it out on mine too. With the quality lags on Zoom, so we'll make sure you can see a really a smoother version of that.
Oh, thank you. That was
I
awesome.
Tell people too, it is a nonprofit, Rising Media Stars. You can donate monthly. You can make it one time. If you can, please do. This is so important. One of the reasons it's so important, the WBCA Mel Greenberg Award goes to somebody in member of women's sports media who best displays a commitment to the game. This award has been in existence for 30 years. Robin Roberts, who many of you know from Good Morning America, she started in sports, won in 2001. LaChina won in 2021. That is 2 Black women in 30 years existence of this award. LaChina should have been awarded way before that. That is why her group is so important. There have got to be representation of Black women in sports media, and all media for that matter, but in this case, LaChina's expertise is sports. So please help her organization. Please share word about it. She mentioned joining organizations that are in journalism, obviously SPJ.org. That's us. We're the East Tennessee chapter. We have traditionally been overly white. That is just the bluntest way to put it. We need more people, women of color, men of color, more journalists of color to get in the organization, get involved, get on the boards, run for office. It's the only way that's going to change anything across the landscape of how journalism looks. So I just want to thank both of you, Gwendolyn, especially for pinch hitting. LaChina, absolutely wonderful as always. And it's always a pleasure to have you. And we will exit out here in just a minute. LaChina, I want to give you a chance to say any last things that Gwen somehow didn't cover. I think she covered all of it, but if there's any last message you have, please share it now.
Well, thank you is really the only message I have. Gwen, you are outstanding. Maria, thank you so much for having me. And even your message of, yes, diversity is important. So hopefully someone that's listening will join your chapter, will get involved. Visibility and representation is everything. And thank you also for the call to action for Rising Media Stars. We are a nonprofit. We're a 100% volunteer organization. So our board does a lot of work and we're trying to expand. We hope to move this program program, not only in Atlanta, but have it in different major cities so that we can be multiplying our efforts to diversify broadcasting. We're also getting ready to bring in our first 2 major sponsors in NBC and NCAA, who are both about to become sponsors of our program. So it's an exciting time, and we appreciate everyone's support. But more than anything, thank you for this platform and for allowing me to share my journey.
Thank you so much. Appreciate both
And
of
good
you.
luck to you.
I will hit end live video right now.
Thank you.
And as we all know, the mics can always sometimes be live. Everybody in
Yes.
broadcast knows that now. I will